I was unaware that my tea had become cold for an extended period of time as I gazed out the window at the gray sky. The rain pounded on the windowsill, evoking the sound of an old clock ticking. This was the sole sound in the house, a reminder of my loneliness. I am Margaret Harris, a 78-year-old widow who has been widowed for 15 years. At times, it seems as though I have lived in numerous lives, and I am now in the final one, which is quiet and unnoticed. My residence in Lakewood is a 2-story Victorian home with a small garden, and the only thing that has remained constant is the creaking of the floorboards and the kitchen radio. I stood on my cane, my knees aching in anticipation of the approaching rain. As I passed the mantelpiece, I paused at a photograph of Frank on our wedding day. He was dressed in a formal suit, his hair neatly combed, and he was sporting an embarrassed smile. Frank was an engineer who was quiet, reliable, and a man of action. He was known for his ability to fix and build things. I whispered to Frank, touching the dusty frame. "What would you say about our son Martin, who was born 2 years after we were married?" We adored him and endeavored not to spoil him. He was polite, performed well in school, and harbored aspirations. Martin, who was 37 years old and married to Laura, aspired to become an engineer like Frank. However, his life was abruptly disrupted when Frank contracted lung cancer. I had hoped that grief would unite us, but it instead drove us apart. At the funeral, Martin stood distantly when the coffin was lowered, causing me to burst into tears. He simply stared into the distance, detached. Subsequently, I inquired about his well-being, stating that I was 40 years old and could not cling to the past. He responded that this was the beginning of our estrangement. 3 years later, Martin divorced Laura, who was kind but naive. I was unable to completely comprehend the reasons for their separation. Martin stated that they parted ways. They had a son named Julian, who was 10 years old. They shared custody of Julian, but he spent the majority of his time with Laura. During this period, I observed that Martin's communication decreased, and his visits were shorter. When he did visit, he was either preoccupied with his phone or discussing work. I missed the warmth of their relationship. One day I attempted to converse with him, and he appeared perplexed. I asked, "What do you mean, Mom? I call." He sighed and replied, "I have a life, Mom. I can't sit around talking about neighbors or your TV shows. That's not what I meant." However, he interrupted and stated, "You've always wanted more than others. Dad understood you didn't." His words hurt more than I could express. I was unable to respond. I had worked hard as a nurse, denying myself for him and Frank, but I had never kept a record of my sacrifices over the years. I had grown accustomed to Martin only contacting me when he needed money for repairs, vacations, or new furniture. I never said no, although I considered it a possibility. Julian, my grandson, was the sole source of light in my life as he visited frequently, initially with Laura and later on his own. He assisted with gardening, listened to my stories, and even taught me how to use a smartphone. "Grandma, you must keep up with the times," he would say, demonstrating how to make video calls. As a result of his guidance, I became proficient in social media, online shopping, and even began a gardening blog. Julian went on to attend university. He visited less frequently, but we maintained communication through video calls. He informed me of his studies, girlfriends, and plans, and I observed the sincerity that his father lacked. Last spring, Julian arrived with the unexpected news that his grandmother and father were getting married. I was taken aback by this news, as Martin had dated several women, but nothing serious. I vaguely remembered Vanessa, who worked at a dental office. Julian shrugged, stating that she was fine, a little bossy and sweet with her father, but different from the rest of us. In reality, she was a package deal. Has a daughter who is 18 years old. I smiled, as people get married for a variety of reasons, honey. It is not our place to judge, but they want a grand wedding. Martin did not contact me directly. Instead, he sent Julian to check on me. Julian informed me that you are not obligated to assist Grandma, as you have your own plans for the money. I brushed it off, as I had no plans at my age to embark on a world cruise. I attempted to maintain a smile, stating that money is for the living, not the dead. Julian shook his head, implying that I was being overly generous. Despite this, I remained optimistic that the wedding would bring us closer. Perhaps Vanessa would be more likable than Julian had described her, and she could bring Martin joy. A mother's greatest desire was to have a happy son. A week later, Martin called, his voice strained, as usual, when he wanted to inquire about his health. He was not ill, but he was experiencing some discomfort from his age. I coughed and announced that I had decided to get married. I was taken aback by the name of my fiancée, Vanessa. She is a wonderful, intelligent, and compassionate individual who is an exceptional hostess. I am delighted for you. I expressed my sincere congratulations and inquired about the date of the wedding, which was in 3 months. He replied that it was a short notice, but we wanted it to be beautiful. I concurred that every bride deserves the best. Additionally, I have encountered financial challenges this year, including renovations and a new car. I inquired about the cost, and he provided me with a number that nearly caused me to drop the phone. I was taken aback by the amount, as it was 3 times what I had anticipated. I know that it is a lot, but it is a significant amount. Vanessa desires the most exceptional rental experience possible. The Lakeside Estate, which is the most expensive venue in Lakewood, is a stunning mansion that offers a breathtaking view of the lake. The estate can accommodate up to 100 guests, including friends, colleagues, and Vanessa's relatives. Martin hesitated, but I assured him that I would assist him. Although we both knew that he would not repay the money for the house, car, or vacation, I agreed to assist him because he is my son. I hoped that this wedding would make a difference, and what else could I do to repay Martin? I will assist you, Mother. Thank you, Mother. Martin arrived with Vanessa a month later. She was attractive with blonde hair, bright makeup, and a flashy manicure. She smiled frequently, but her eyes were cold. She looked around the house, her gaze lingering on the antique clock and silver tea set gifts. He called more frequently, sometimes twice a week, to discuss the preparations with Vanessa and her daughter Abby. It felt as though we were regaining a sense of intimacy, but I knew it was all about the money. From my mother, what lovely things she said, they must be expensive. I replied that they belong to my mother, and antiques are expensive. We casually drank tea and discussed the wedding while they talked, and I listened as Vanessa described the dress, flowers, and menu. Martin nodded as if he were hearing it for the 100th time, but he remained interested. I asked if there was anything I could do to help, besides providing money. "Oh, Margaret, there is no need for concern. Vanessa reassured me that you should take a break from the wedding planner at your age, and I will take care of everything. I am not ill, rather said that I could assist with the seating." "No," she interrupted, "it is all predetermined. Please arrive and enjoy yourself." Vanessa provided me with a dry, formal hug as they departed. She expressed her gratitude for my attendance at our wedding, Margaret, as it is significant to Martin. However, her tone left me feeling uneasy, as if she were doing me a favor by allowing me to attend her wedding, which I was paying for. Afterward, I sat by the window for an extended period, gazing at the rain. I had a hunch that this wedding would not be enjoyable for either of us, but I pushed those thoughts aside. Perhaps Vanessa truly loved him, or it was difficult for me to accept that my son had chosen someone else. Julian received a call from an additional woman that evening. She inquired about the meeting with his future daughter-in-law. I responded that it was satisfactory, attempting to avoid inciting him to turn against his father. Julian grinned and stated, "That's one way to put it, Grandma. Vanessa knows how to charm when she wants something. I have nothing to give her but money for the wedding," to which I replied, "And I've already promised it. It's not just money." Julian's tone became increasingly serious. She desired to exert control over everyone around him, including you. I smiled and added, "I hope so." Julian sighed, "Just don't let them use me." I reassured you that everything was fine, but I was aware that something had commenced that I was unable to halt. It was akin to a snowball descending a mountain, gaining momentum, and I was merely observing, unable to alter its trajectory. The phone rang once more, and Martin's name appeared on the screen. It was likely that he was contacting me to express gratitude for the warm reception or to request additional funds. I took a deep breath and answered the call. It was a cloudy morning, but it was not raining, which was at least a small victory for my aching joints. I walked slowly downstairs, holding onto the banister, as today was the first meeting with the wedding planner. Martin had contacted me yesterday to inform me that he and Vanessa had arranged a meeting. He hurriedly reminded me that I had never been late, but I had been silent in my conversations with him lately. At 9:30, I was prepared with a gray dress, pearl brooch, and low-heeled shoes, which Alfred had given me as a gift for our 20th anniversary. I looked in the mirror and combed my gray hair into a neat bun. The cab arrived on time, and the 20-minute ride to Lakeside Estate took me through the familiar streets of Lakewood. The bookstore, which had been transformed into a coffee shop, the park where little Martin fed the ducks, the hospital where I had worked for 35 years, and the Lakeside Estate, which was an 18th-century Georgian mansion that overlooked the lake, all greeted me with their grand facades. I sighed as I recalled the check I had written to Martin 2 weeks prior. Throughout my life, I had saved for a rainy day, but now my savings were evaporating. Vanessa met me at the entrance wearing a flawless makeup and a tight beige dress that accentuated her figure. She made me feel old and out of place. Margaret finally arrived. Martin and a woman in her 40s, who was presumably Ms. Wilson, were waiting in the spacious hallway with its marble floor and crystal chandeliers. Martin appeared tense, as if he were in an important meeting. He gave me a brief hug and introduced me to the organizer's mother, Vanessa Wilson, who is the best wedding coordinator in the county. Vanessa is my mother, Margaret Harris. Martin continued to kiss the air near my cheek. Vanessa introduced us and detailed the plan for a modern yet elegant wedding with traditional elements. The ceremony would take place on the terrace with a view of the lake, followed by cocktails in the garden and dinner in the main hall. The color scheme was lavender, silver, and white, in honor of Alfred, my late husband, who favored white roses. I commented on this, and Vanessa gave me a peculiar look. Margaret suggested that we consider peas, but I personally prefer peonies. We ascended the terrace, where the view was breathtaking, with manicured lawns sloping down to the lake. Vanessa pointed to the center of the terrace, where the chairs will be arranged in a semicircle. Following the vows, the newlyweds will descend the stairs to the garden. I inquired about the possibility of rain, and Vanessa rolled her eyes. However, Ms. Wilson responded that we have a contingency plan in place. In the event of inclement weather, the ceremony will be held in the music parlor. The seating plan was unveiled in the main hall by Ms. Wilson. We are proposing 10 tables of 10, with an additional head for the newlyweds and their close family members, who will be seated at the head table. I inquired of Martin, my parents, my sibling and his wife, and 2 close acquaintances. Vanessa responded without looking at me. I inquired in astonishment, and there was an awkward pause. Martin informed me that there are only 10 seats at the head table, and we believed you would be more at ease with your peers. Whom are your friends? I was perplexed when you stated that you would inform us of the individuals to invite. Martin expressed uncertainty, and I refrained from naming anyone because you did not inquire. Martin, I am your mother. Ms. Wilson coughed uncomfortably. We can revise the seating plan, perhaps adding a seat at the head table. Vanessa interrupted, stating that it has been approved. Symmetry is important for photos. Margaret, you do realize that a wedding is about the couple, right? I felt heat rush down my face. Of course, it is about the newlyweds, but is it customary for the groom's mother to sit with strangers? I replied, it's fine. I can sit wherever you want, Martin sighed with relief, and Vanessa smiled victoriously. We have a tentative list of guests, including my relatives, co-workers, friends, and some of Martin's important clients. I inquired about the number of guests, and Martin replied, 115. I was taken aback when he replied, 100. I responded, every additional guest is an extra expense. Don't be so petty. Vanessa dismissed the idea, stating, 15 people won't make a difference. They're potential investors for Martin's new project. When the conversation turned to wine, I suggested that we try Marlowe champagne, which is of good quality but less expensive than Crystal. Vanessa appeared to be. I simply suggested that vinegar Marlowe be served at my wedding, as it is a significant cost-saving measure. If you are unable to finance a traditional wedding, please inform me. Vanessa spoke with a lowered voice, expressing that the humiliation was more painful than the anger. I did not indicate that I was unable to afford it. Rather, I proposed a reasonable alternative. Martin intervened, urging us to entrust the professionals. By noon, we had completed the planning process and had gone to lunch. Vanessa immediately ordered the most expensive wine on the menu. I mentally calculated how many more of these gestures I could perform. Before my savings ran out during lunch, Vanessa became more talkative. You know, Margaret, I've always wanted a real wedding. The first one was so modest. It was a town hall dinner for 20 people. My ex-husband insisted on saving money, but now I can do everything I dreamed of for myself. I thought, but only smiled politely. What about your dress? I asked if you had picked it out. Vanessa replied, yes, it's from a London designer. It's ivory, embroidered with crystals, and has a 3-meter train. I replied, what about you, Martin? I asked, we're thinking about it. He replied, embarrassed, there's a tailor. Vanessa interrupted as the car pulled up in front of my house, asking, by the way, Margaret, what are you planning to wear? I replied, I have a blue dress that I wore to a friend's wedding last year. It doesn't match our color scheme. You'll need something matching silver or light lavender and no collars or brooches. Vanessa's tone was condescending, and I felt a pang of resentment. My collars and brooches are an integral part of my style. I said, I'll think about it, don't worry. In the evening, Julian contacted Grandma to inquire about the meeting with the organizer. I responded that the lakeside estate was beautiful but exorbitantly expensive. Julian inquired about the menu and seating arrangements, which were luxurious. I was aware of the tone, but I just felt a bit overweight. I am responsible for the wedding but have no say in the decisions. I am surprised that my father permits it. Julian sounded irritated, as he has always been apprehensive. Vanessa has him in her clutches, but not in the way she has him. Perhaps he is simply in love. I suggested that he is not in love, rather it is something else. Vanessa is manipulative, so don't worry, Julian, I hastily replied. It's their day, their decision. It's not right, Grandma. I'll talk to Dad, please don't. I stated that I did not want to cause any trouble. The following day, I received the final estimate from Ms. Wilson. It was 30% higher than the original estimate, and it consumed nearly all of my remaining savings. I signed the consent form in the hopes that it would reintegrate me into my son's life. Over the next 2 weeks, Vanessa called me daily with new complaints and demands, including tablecloths and shades. One day, Margaret called in a particularly enraged state, asking if she had found the right outfit. I replied that I had ordered a silver gray dress, as you had requested. She insisted that the pictures would look terrible and that no one would notice. I replied calmly that I would notice, and she snapped that if you wanted to support Martin, you would do as I asked. I closed my eyes, knowing that this was the manipulation Julian had warned me about. Okay, I'll see what I can do. 5 minutes later, my phone was inundated with alerts. Vanessa had sent links to dresses that were 3 times the price of the one I had already purchased. They all appeared too youthful for my age, with deep necklines and sequins. I refrained from contacting her immediately and instead spent the entire day at the mall in the adjacent town, visiting each store. Eventually, I discovered a modest lavender dress with long sleeves and a stand-up collar that was both elegant and age-appropriate. I took a picture and sent it to Vanessa. Her reply was swift. It looks like funeral clothes. Can't you find something stylish? My face was flushed with humiliation as the saleswoman beside me offered me a sympathetic expression. Are you having trouble, madam? She inquired. I sighed, as my future daughter-in-law believed that I should appear 25 at her wedding. The saleswoman smiled sympathetically and offered me a lavender dress with silver trim. It was elegant, with 3-cord sleeves and a moderate collar that fell just below the knee. It was a stunning dress. I asked if I could try it on. It fit perfectly. I sent Vanessa a quick message and a picture of the dress. After a while, her reply arrived, "It will do." But the accessories must be silver. No pearls or old-fashioned brooches. The saleswoman rolled her eyes. Your daughter-in-law sounds like a treasure. She said she's energetic. I replied that we found a modest silver necklace and earrings with small amethyst to match the dress later. Martin called. Did you talk to Vanessa today? Yes, about the dress. I bought something she liked. She'd been freaking out about it. You know, the wedding is in 3 weeks and everyone is on edge. I understand, I said softly, but he hesitated. We were considering whether you could help us. I should not attend the rehearsal. It may be too much for your knees. Please attend the ceremony. My heart ached as I realized that I was once again being excluded. I replied with a steady voice despite the fact that I was internally raging. I thanked my mother for her support. She was the best. I would send a cab on the wedding day. Following the call, I sat in silence, feeling isolated. A week prior to the wedding, Vanessa had organized a bachelorette party to which I was not invited. I discovered this when I contacted Martin, and he informed me that they were at the pub because the girls had taken over the house. I felt particularly isolated, so I contacted Julian. "Grandma, how are you doing?" I attempted to smirk, but he was unable to perceive it. "How is school? It is acceptable. Are you planning to attend the rehearsal?" "No," I replied. "Martin said it would be chaotic, so I will just come directly to the ceremony." Julian paused, and you said sure. What else was I supposed to do? I requested that you inform him that you are the mother of the betrothed and have the right to attend the rehearsal, particularly since you are responsible for the wedding expenses. Julian, I am not interested in causing any difficulty. They are utilizing your grandmother. The night before the wedding, I was consumed by questions about how I would be treated, where I would sit, and whether anyone would care that I was there except for photos. I woke up early and meticulously styled my hair before putting on the lavender dress and silver jewelry. I looked at myself in the mirror and thought I looked elegant, dignified, and well-dressed. Although they wanted your money, they do not want you. Please refrain from getting involved. He reluctantly agreed, but I could feel his anger through the phone. At the designated time, the taxi arrived and I verified its arrival. I left the house with the honeymoon gift, an envelope containing a substantial check, and the drive to Lakeside Estate seemed shorter this time. Upon my arrival, guests were already gathered on the terrace, and the weather was perfect, sunny with a gentle breeze. I made my way toward the entrance, my heart pounding. The day could either be a new beginning with my son and his wife, or confirmation that I was merely a banker to them. Upon my arrival at the estate, I observed delivery vans, florists carrying flowers, and workers erecting the venue. I paid the driver and proceeded to the entrance, feeling slightly awkward. Perhaps Martin was correct. I should not have arrived so early. Upon entering, I encountered Ms. Wilson, who appeared surprised. "Mrs. Harris, you are early. The ceremony is not until 11:30. I thought I could be of assistance," I said, smiling. Ms. Wilson glanced at her watch and responded, "That's nice. However, we have everything under control. Perhaps you would like to rest in the library while you wait." I realized that I was being politely dismissed, but I persisted, asking for Martin's whereabouts. I wanted to congratulate him before the ceremony. "Harris is preparing in the East Wing," and Ms. Wilson responded that he requested not to be disturbed due to the pre-wedding excitement. I nodded, but I was left feeling rejected. My own son did not want to see me before the most significant moment of his life. Vanessa and her friends were in the West Wing, finishing their hair and makeup. I suggested that they relax in the library, and I would send someone over when it was time to take my seat. I agreed, and I was escorted to the library. It was an elegant room filled with books and comfortable chairs by the window. As soon as Miss Wilson departed, I felt isolated. 20 minutes after I had paid for the wedding, a waitress arrived with tea and cookies. I inquired about the status of the preparations, which were proceeding smoothly. She responded that the bride had already altered the floral arrangements twice and that there was an issue with the cake. Genuinely, it caught me off guard that the pastry chef's fees were so high. "Yes, madam, but Miss Malcolm is extremely meticulous. She desires perfection." After the waitress departed, I proceeded to the window. The ceremony arch was nearly completed and the chairs were neatly arranged. Everything appeared immaculate without my involvement. I decided to exit the library and observe the progress as I had paid for the entire experience. I entered the hall, which had been transformed since my previous visit. The snow-white tablecloths, silver and crystal accents, and lavender flowers were all in perfect harmony. I located my seat in the farthest corner near the kitchen exit. I couldn't help but grin symbolically. Harris, a young man who was one of Ms. Wilson's assistants, summoned me to take my seat for the ceremony. I glanced at my watch, realizing that I was tardy on the terrace. The guests were already seated, and I was directed to the front row, where I would be at least in close proximity to Martin during the vows. As I sat, I observed the young, affluent guests, and I recognized Vanessa's relatives by their posture and glances. The music began, and Martin walked down the aisle in a suit that was likely expensive. He appeared tense but handsome, and my heart swelled with pride. His best man, a co-worker whom I had encountered at parties, stood beside him. We briefly exchanged glances, and I smiled. The music changed, and Vanessa walked down the aisle in a stunning ivory gown, trailing behind her like a sparkling brook. The ceremony was flawless, from the vows to the rings to the kiss. I wiped away a tear as Martin recited his vows, and despite everything, I was happy for him, or at least I wanted to be. After the ceremony, the guests moved to the garden for cocktails, and I stayed to the side to watch Martin and Vanessa greet people. A few approached me, introduced themselves, and engaged in small talk before moving on. I felt like a celebrity. Stranger at this celebration, suddenly someone called my name. It was Julian, who was rushing toward me through the crowd, looking all grown up in a suit. "Grandma finally found you." He hugged me tightly, saying, "You look handsome today." I stated, "You look stunning." He replied, pulling away to examine the dress that suited you. "Vanessa selected it, which I appreciate." He beamed, "Of course she did." "Have you had the opportunity to meet her family?" Like nobility, they were situated by the fountain. "I have not," I stated, "but I did not anticipate that they would introduce you. Vanessa could have taken a moment to introduce you to her family. Let's not discuss it. It is their wedding day and we do not want to overshadow it." I said, "I will stay with you," in an attempt to avoid a scene. Julian insisted that I do not want you to sit alone. "You have your own friends." Julian reluctantly agreed to go have fun, but before he left, he whispered, "If you need anything, please do not hesitate." I immediately resolved to stroll through the garden, which was exquisitely decorated with fountains, flowers, and lights that were poised to illuminate the night. The expense of the endeavor caused me to tremble, but I reminded myself that I had previously undertaken it for Martin. The newlyweds' photo shoot appeared to be endless, as the photographer yelled instructions and arranged them in various poses against the picturesque estate backdrop. I observed, hesitant to approach, until they began taking group photos with their relatives, to which I was not invited. I observed Vanessa embrace her parents and Martin embrace her mother. The gong rang, inviting guests to dinner. I found my table in the corner, where a few older guests, likely Vanessa's distant relatives who had been sidelined from the main table, were sitting. We exchanged pleasantries, but I barely noticed the food. My attention was on the main table, where Martin and Vanessa were laughing with her relatives. My son did not once look my way after dessert. The toast began with Vanessa's father praising his daughter and expressing his gratitude for having Martin as a son-in-law. The best man then spoke. I felt the need for fresh air, so I walked out onto the terrace where the ceremony had been hours earlier. The chairs were gone, but the arch still stood softly lit. I took a deep breath, wishing I could leave this day behind like a bad dream. However, I was compelled to wait for the cake cutting and the first dance, and I had to smile and pretend everything was fine. Suddenly, Vanessa's sharp voice cut through the air and she said, "I've been looking for you," as she stood. Vanessa is standing in the doorway, her wedding dress still shining, but her expression is one of disapproval. "What is the matter, Vanessa?" I inquired, attempting to maintain composure. "You ruined my wedding." She responded bitterly, "I don't understand." I responded, "I have endeavored to remain out of the way. Initially, you engaged in arguments over trivial matters, and then you arrived early to observe everything. Now, you are present to draw attention to yourself while everyone is waiting for us to cut the cake." I was merely attempting to catch my breath when I said, "Don't pretend," my voice shaking. She snapped, "You have been attempting to ruin everything from the beginning." I stood there in awe. The woman who had been so sweet moments ago was now angry, aggressive, and inebriated. I asked her to calm down, saying softly, I didn't mean to ruin anything, Vanessa shouted so loudly that several guests turned around. I know what you're doing. You've always done this. Martin told me how you controlled him and smothered him with your care. I felt the blood drain from my face. My son denied the claim, but I quietly replied, I only wanted the best for him. Vanessa snorted, You wanted him to depend on you forever, but now he has me, and your manipulations will not work. A small crowd had gathered. I could hear the whispers, and the humiliation was more painful than the fury. Vanessa, please, I said, stepping toward her and holding out my hand. Let's not cause a scene, don't touch me. She recoiled. And yes, this is my day, a day you are attempting to ruin. Martin emerged with a look of alarm. What is the matter? He gazed at me and Vanessa, your mother. Vanessa, who was trembling, gestured at me, indicating that she had come to disrupt the process and divert everyone's attention during the cake cutting. I was merely attempting to catch my breath when I spoke, my throat getting constricted. I was unaware that they were searching for you for the cake. Vanessa took Martin's arm. Vanessa raised her voice, stating, She is in denial. She always does this. I looked at my son, hoping he would deny it, but he remained silent. I whispered, Do you really think? And he avoided my eyes. Mom, let's not do this now. Just go back to the hall. Well, forget this. Vanessa has ruined our day from the start. I don't want her here for the cake or in our pictures. Martin was torn between us. Perhaps you could calm down, but she stomped her foot like a child. I want her to leave. She is not welcome. She shouted the last words directly at me, and the crowd gasped. I froze as I gazed at Martin, anticipating that he would defend me and assert that I was not an unwanted guest at his wedding. However, he remained mute, his head bowed. I trembled as he looked up, and I could not discern any love in his eyes. He suggested that I leave, as I had witnessed the ceremony and Vanessa's distress. He said quietly, You have witnessed the ceremony, and Vanessa is upset. I sensed a sensation within me, and I snapped. The final connection to my son had been severed. I said, I will leave you both with my last shred of dignity. I walked slowly toward the exit, feeling the eyes of the shocked guests on me. No one stopped me, only Julian, who appeared at the door, attempted to approach. I shook my head as I did not want him to get into a fight with his father in the check room. I took my purse and shawl, and the doorman hailed a cab without making eye contact. The news of the scandal had already spread, and as I waited, Miss Wilson approached me, looking concerned. I am so sorry, Mrs. Harris. Perhaps we could discuss it later. I interrupted her in the morning when everyone had settled down. I was exhausted and simply wanted to return home. The cab arrived a mere 10 minutes later, and I gazed back at the illuminated windows of Lakeside Estate as I drove away. The festivities continued without me, as if I had never been a part of Martin's life. The following morning, I awoke late, and my body was aching from physical and emotional exhaustion. For a brief moment, I believed it was a bad dream, but reality quickly dawned on me. My son had allowed Vanessa to exclude me from the wedding. I had purchased tea, despite my lack of appetite. The previous night, my phone had been turned off and was sitting on the kitchen table. I hesitated before turning it on, as I was apprehensive about the possibility of receiving an apology or accusation. However, I was aware that I would soon have to confront the repercussions. I read the messages, which included 8 messages from Martin, a couple from Julian, and 1 from an unfamiliar number, likely Miss Wilson. I read the messages, and my mother urged me to call me when she saw the urgent message from Martin. She inquired as to why I was not responding. An hour later, I received another message from my grandmother, asking if she was okay. Julian sent the message around midnight, while the other messages from Martin were more insistent. The administration is claiming that you have refused to pay the balance due to a billing issue. Is this a misunderstanding? Please call me back immediately. The final message stated that I would be there in 30 minutes. I sighed, knowing that Martin would be arriving soon. I wondered whether he would arrive with an apology or an accusation. I already knew the answer, and after I had prepared myself, I devised a plan. I would not be paying for the remainder of the wedding. It was not solely about the money, it was about not being manipulated any longer. It was enough. Subsequently, the doorbell rang with a sharp and insistent sound. I opened the door to find Martin, who was exhausted and had wrinkled shirt, circles under his eyes, and disheveled hair. What most struck me was the anger on his face, rather than remorse. He asked, "Why didn't you answer the phone?" as he entered the house without permission. "Did you realize the consequences of your actions?" I closed the door and turned with composure. "Hello, Martin. It is a pleasure to see you as well. This is not the time for sarcasm," he said, dragging his hand through his hair. "We are in very serious trouble. The estate has claimed that you have refused to pay the bill. The wedding balance is due in full by the end of the day, or they will file a lawsuit." I elevated my eyebrow in response to your statement. "What do you mean?" "Martin was bewildered by your promise to cover the wedding expenses." I responded calmly, but your wife made it clear that I was not welcome, and you concurred. Martin blushed with anger. "You are a mature man, Mother. Vanessa was apprehensive. It is a common occurrence. You cannot simply sabotage everything." I chuckled. That is an intriguing perspective. What do you refer to when your wife publicly humiliates your mother? Martin collapsed onto the couch, his arms over his head. His parents were furious, and we would be a disgrace if we did not pay. I did not take sides, and he raised his voice. I was attempting to defuse the situation by sending me home, and I finished for him in a very effective manner. He looked up, his eyes flickering with something akin to realization, but it faded. "I understand that you were uncomfortable, and I apologize to Vanessa. I was apprehensive, but this is blackmail, Martin." I shook my head. "It is the repercussions of your and Vanessa's decision. You must now bear the bills." He began to choke on his indignation, as you had promised that we could not pay. You had a wedding that you were unable to afford. I stated that you used me as an ATM and threw me away when I became inconvenient. This is not fair. Martin slammed his fist against the wall. "We did not exploit you. You offered to assist, and I did. I said quietly because I wanted to be a part of your happy day. However, what I received was humiliation." Martin took a deep breath in an attempt to calm down. "I understand that you are upset, but I urge you to consider your reputation. If you fail to pay, people will accuse you of being a bitter old woman." I smiled bitterly, as the manipulation was predictable. "I no longer care about what others think, as it is becoming irrelevant at my age." "What about Julian? You are placing him in a terrible situation," he said, his voice rising. "Leave Julian out of this." I snapped, stating that he has nothing to do with it and is my son. Martin accused me of destroying our family with your selfishness, a word that I dreaded. I had spent my life giving, and whenever I established boundaries, I was labeled selfish. When I donated the last of my savings to your education, was that selfish? When I assisted with the down payment for the house, was that selfish? Martin did not respond, but he was not backing down. "You know, if you loved me, you would pay the bills and forget about last night." I replied firmly, "I will not pay and I will not forget." He stared at me as if he were seeing me for the first time. "Are you serious? You are ruining my life due to your resentment." "I am not ruining your life. I mentioned that if a few thousand can ruin your life, you should reevaluate your priorities." Martin grabbed his jacket. "Vanessa was correct that you were cold, calculating, and controlling. You never truly loved me. You only loved the power money gave you." His words stung, but I refrained from expressing my feelings. "If it makes you feel better," I said softly, "we both know the truth." And he laughed bitterly. "You are jealous and cannot stand that I have found a woman who loves me. You are attempting to ruin it." "Go away," I said, pointing to the door. "Before we both say something we will regret. I am finally expressing what I have been thinking for years." He stormed after his father's death, becoming unbearable as he constantly probed and attempted to regulate everything. I endured it due to the financial gain, but it is no longer worth it. He slammed the door, causing a framed photo to fall, its glass shattering. The photo was of our family, including me, Alfred, and little Martin on a picnic. We were all smiling. I carefully picked up the frame, removing the photo from the shards. Interestingly, I did not experience any tears. Instead, I felt a strange sense of relief. An hour later, Julian contacted his grandmother, asking if I was okay. Dad had just left and he was furious. I am now in a state of shock. I replied, "Yes, honey, I am not paying the remaining wedding bills." Julian expressed concern, but I responded calmly, "I understand. However, your father is in a state of panic. He claims that Lakeside Estate is threatening to sue. I suggested that they handle the situation, but Grandma expressed concern that this could lead to a complete breakdown in the relationship. I concurred, but I also mentioned that it had already deteriorated when your father allowed Vanessa to evict me. Julian sighed. I don't want to be caught in the middle. You won't be. I reassured him that I would not be involved. I would never place you in that situation, so after the call, I decided to turn my phone off again. I was confident that Martin and Vanessa would continue to exert pressure on me, but I was done. The following morning, the doorbell rang and I hesitated, suspecting it was Vanessa. However, when I looked out, I saw a stranger in a business suit, Mrs. Harris. She introduced herself as Elizabeth Norris, and she informed me that she represented the administration of Lakeside Estate. I said calmly, "Come in, Miss Norris. I anticipated your arrival." She was taken aback by my composure, but she quickly regained it. "We are currently experiencing an issue with the wedding payment. You agreed to cover all expenses, but you have refused to pay the remaining balance." I directed her to a chair for tea and coffee, but she declined. I acknowledged that there was an incident, but I interrupted her to clarify that I did not sign a contract with Lakeside Estate. The arrangements were verbal between me and my son, and I agreed to pay under specific conditions that were not met. She frowned. "But you made a down payment, which implies that you only owe a portion of the total. Implies that I responded and is non-refundable. As you are aware, Lakeside Estate has not suffered any loss. The balance is substantial." She presented me with the bill, claiming that your son and his wife are unable to pay. I responded that they ordered the services and should be responsible for paying. She then changed tactics, stating that she was concerned about your family's reputation and that if the bill is not paid, legal action would be taken in public. I responded that I am not concerned about this, as reputation is irrelevant at my age. She sighed, clearly unprepared for my response. "I will inform management, but if it is not paid by the end of the week, legal action will be taken." I wished her the best of luck. I experienced a peculiar sense of tranquility for the first time in years, and to be frank, it was liberating. Later that evening, the doorbell rang again, and it was Vanessa, this time without Martin. She appeared different, with no makeup, plain clothes, and tear-stained eyes. She began to apologize for my behavior at the wedding, to which I replied coldly, "You can't take those things back." She lowered her eyes and said, "I regret it. You expressed a desire for a positive relationship with me." I inquired as to why you made it clear that I was unwanted, and she hesitated. She explained that you are Martin's mother, and that means that you are a significant part of his life. Vanessa swallowed, clearly holding back harsh words. "I hope you'll pay the bills as promised," she said. "But that's not why I'm here. I genuinely want to mend things." She shook her head. "You came here because Martin failed to make me pay. Now it's your turn." She admitted that she was too demanding. "Weddings are stressful. You wanted perfection. I finished for her." Charm predictable. Her face shifted, the pleasant mask slipping. "I am here for the money. Martin is desperate and will sue if we do not pay Lakeside Estate, which will ruin his career." I replied calmly, "You were not interested when you kicked me out of the wedding. It's not about me," Vanessa snapped. "It's about Martin. Are you really willing to ruin his life because of your resentment?" "It ruined mine too," I said softly, but that did not bother you. Vanessa gritted her teeth. "You're acting like a child. An eye for an eye at your behavior." I raised my eyebrow as she screamed, "When is it appropriate to allow others to walk all over you? Is it only when you are dead, or is it at any age?" "Martin was correct about you. You have always attempted to control him with money, but now we can do so without you. I will sell my car, we will take out a loan, and we will pay it off. You will never see us or Julian again." "Julian," I inquired, "can you prevent him from seeing me?" She replied as she grabbed her bag and stormed out. He would not want to sully his relationship with his father for an old woman who would soon be gone. Her words hurt, but I knew they were hollow. "Julian, the following day I received a call from a lawyer from Lakeside Estates who was more professional than Miss Norris. The message was the same. If the bill was not paid, they would sue. I ended the call politely and contacted my lawyer, Mr. Parker, to discuss the potential lawsuit and make changes to my will. After the call, I felt calm for the first time in ages. For once, I was not acting out of fear, but out of respect for myself. I let Vanessa believe that I was a vindictive old woman, when in reality, I was simply setting healthy boundaries, which I should have done years ago. The spring sun shone through the windows of my new apartment, filling the space with warmth. It had been 6 months since Vanessa evicted me from the wedding, and I had made a life-changing decision to sell the old Victorian house. The memories of the past were a hindrance to me, and the house had become too much for me. A young family purchased it, and I was relieved to hear the sounds of children's laughter once more. I used the proceeds to purchase a cozy one-bedroom apartment in a new Lakewood neighborhood. The apartment was conveniently located near stores, a pharmacy, and a cafe where I enjoyed breakfast on Sundays. I had not spoken to Martin or Vanessa since after Vanessa's visit and her threats. I anticipated additional pressure, but it did not materialize. Julian informed me that they were required to take out a loan to pay off the lakeside estate, which had a negative impact on their finances. They canceled their honeymoon and Vanessa sold her car, which appeared to be sufficient to discourage them from continuing the conflict. Julian remained the sole link to my former life, and despite Vanessa's threats, he continued to visit, and our relationship grew even stronger. One weekend, he told me, "I have never seen you so free." He nodded. "You used to be tense, waiting for something to happen, but now it's like you've spread your wings." His words made me reflect. Despite my age, I felt lighter, calmer, and as if I had shed a heavy burden. A new life necessitated a new environment, so I enrolled in a computer course at the library. I already had basic skills, but I wanted to improve them. I met Doris, a widow like me, in the course. She lived nearby, and we began to spend time together. One day she said, "I always thought it was too late to start." Something novel at our age, but you have swayed my opinion. I responded with a smile. It is never too late. The only question is whether we have the courage. I volunteered at the library after completing the course, teaching other seniors computer skills. This experience provided me with a sense of purpose and meaning. I also resumed my gardening blog, which I used to share tips on urban gardening. To my surprise, it became quite popular with thousands of subscribers. One day, while at the library, I noticed a new visitor, a man with a neat gray beard who approached me after class. He introduced himself as Robert Fleming, and I acknowledged him. He chuckled as we conversed for a while, and it turned out that Robert had been widowed 3 years ago and had recently relocated to Lakewood. He was also studying computers after class. He invited me to join him for tea at a nearby cafe, and we had a pleasant conversation reminiscing about old colleagues. I mentioned that you had changed, Margaret, and he observed that you had gained more confidence. I smiled, particularly because life teaches you a lot. He smiled back, perhaps at 65. I had always thought you were an attractive woman, but now I blushed at 78. Who would have thought? He said, "Seriously, I'm just saying what I think. Perhaps we should have dinner sometime." I agreed, surprised by my own audacity. A date at my age seemed exciting. We had dinner a week later. Robert was gallant, the conversation was light and easy, and by the end of the evening I realized that I hadn't felt so good in a long time. "Could I accompany you home?" As we exited the restaurant, he inquired whether I would like to participate. I responded that we would. Robert kissed my cheek as we conversed slowly about Star's childhood and unfulfilled aspirations at my door. "I am grateful for the delightful evening, Margaret, and I am optimistic that we will have the opportunity to do so again." "We will." Robert was respectful, intelligent, and amusing, and he never rushed, honoring my boundaries. Julian was delighted with our friendship, and he said that Dr. Fleming is a fortunate man. Our relationship with Robert was not strained, and I smiled, feeling an excitement that I had thought had long since dissipated. Although it was a youthful relationship, it was a profound affection between two individuals who recognized the importance of each day. Robert invited me to leave town 6 months after Martin's wedding. He had rented a compact vehicle that was more convenient for us. We traveled along a picturesque road to a small fishing village. Our destination was unknown. I inquired whether it was a surprise, and Robert beamed. We arrived at a charming village by the coast with narrow streets and white houses with blue shutters. Robert parked and explained that his sister had offered him the house while she was traveling in Europe. We proceeded to a house with a porch. I believed you would appreciate the magnificent sea view. Robert stated that it brings me tranquility. We spent the day walking, collecting shells, and enjoying lunch. Robert shared childhood memories with me, and I shared stories of Alfred and Martin. The sadness for what could have been was a sharp sting by the evening. We sat on the terrace and watched the sunset. Robert turned to me with seriousness, and I wanted to ask you something else. My heart was racing with excitement. Would you like to spend the summer with me? Not permanently, but for the season. The sea, fresh air, and your knees will feel better, and I will enjoy your company. I hesitated, considering my apartment and volunteer work, which could remain closed. Robert smiled, and you could conduct online counseling. I gazed at the sea and then at Robert's kind eyes and gray beard, and I realized that I wanted to spend the summer here. I simply replied, yes. His smile brightened, and you make me happy, Margaret. We observed the final rays of the sun disappear, and I reflected on the extraordinary nature of life at the age of 78. Upon my return home that evening, I was filled with a sense of tranquility. It was as though everything was falling into place. Although I was uncertain about the future, I was prepared for it. Upon my arrival, I discovered a message from Julian informing me that he would be arriving for the weekend. I was confident that he would be pleased with my summer plans. Before retiring for the night, I gazed out the window at the city's twinkling lights and pondered the possibility of our paths crossing again. For the time being, I was grateful for the strength to break free from toxic relationships, and I had discovered new friends and joys. Alfred, I am finally living for myself. I murmured as I gazed at the stars, remembering your assurance that I was stronger than I thought. I finally believe it. I contemplated the sea, the summer house, and Robert as I drifted off to slumber, and a sense of comfort enveloped me.